I arrived in that western town just as the sun was beginning to sink behind the horizon. The light stretched long shadows across the dirt road, and for a moment, everything stood still. My boots were heavy with dust, my throat dry from days of travel, and my mind quieter than it had been in a long time. The road behind me had taught me one thing very clearly. The West did not care who you were before you arrived. The town itself did not welcome strangers. It did not need to. Wooden buildings stood in uneven lines, worn down by years of wind, heat, and human disappointment. Paint peeled from walls like old scars. Doors stayed half closed, not out of fear, but habit. In places like this, people learned early that attention could be dangerous. I stopped in the middle of the street and listened. No music, no celebration, just the sound of the wind, moving dust from one place to another, as if even the land was restless. Somewhere far off, a horse shifted its weight, a board creaked. That was all. They tell stories about the Western era like it was built on courage and conquest. They talk about gunslingers and heroes, but standing there alone, I understood something those stories always forgot. Most people in the West were not brave. They were tired. They woke up every day knowing life could break them without warning, and they kept going anyway. I walked slowly, keeping my hands visible, my head level. Moving fast made people nervous. Looking lost made you a target. I passed the saloon without stopping. Laughter leaked through the doors, forced and sharp, like men trying to remind themselves they were still alive. Inside, drinks were poured and stories were told, but none of it reached the street. The West had a way of separating comfort from reality. Hunger followed me like a shadow, not the kind that made your stomach growl loudly, but the quiet kind that settled into your thoughts. You stopped thinking about the future. You stopped thinking about dreams. You only thought about the next meal, the next sip of water, the next place to rest your body. I found a small boarding house at the edge of town. The woman behind the counter barely looked up when I placed my coins down. She had seen too many men like me. Some stayed. Most didn't. The room she gave me was small and cold. A narrow bed, a single chair, a window that looked out over nothing worth remembering. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound felt close. Every pause felt meaningful. In the West, silence was never empty. It was full of things you could not see yet. Lying there in the dark, I asked myself the question every man asked sooner or later. Should I leave before morning? I told myself I would decide later. That was the first mistake. Morning arrived without asking my permission. A pale light crept through the thin window, cutting across the floor like a quiet reminder that time did not wait for anyone. I sat up slowly, listening. The town was awake now, but only just. Footsteps moved with purpose. Somewhere, metal scraped against wood. Life was beginning again, whether people were ready or not. I washed my face at the pump outside. The water was cold, sharp enough to clear my thoughts. Another man stood nearby, doing the same. He looked worn down by years, rather than age. We exchanged nothing but a nod. In the West, that nod meant understanding. It meant you didn't ask questions that didn't concern you. It meant respect. I spent the morning walking, not wandering, walking with intention, even if I did not yet know where I was going. Towns like this could feel your uncertainty. Shops opened slowly. A blacksmith hammered metal with a rhythm that sounded almost comforting. Children were nowhere to be seen. That told me more than words ever could. Food was expensive. Everything was. Survival had its own economy, and it did not forgive those who came unprepared. I counted my coins more than once before buying a simple meal. It tasted plain, but it filled the space hunger had carved into me. For a moment, I felt human again. That feeling did not last. By midday, an opportunity found me. Not honest work. Honest work rarely found anyone quickly, but an offer all the same. The man who spoke to me kept his voice low. He didn't threaten. He didn't promise glory.
He didn't promise
He only
glory.
promised payment.
He only promised payment.
Enough to ease hunger.
Enough to ease hunger.
Enough to make
Enough to make
staying
staying seem reasonable.
I listened. That was my second mistake. In the West, listening was dangerous. It made you imagine futures
that might cost more than you were willing to pay.
As he spoke,
I
weighed things
quietly.
How long my money would last. How long my strength would hold. How many times I had told myself I would not cross certain lines again. The Western era did not care about your past mistakes. It only waited patiently for you to repeat them. I declined, not dramatically, not proudly, just firmly enough to end the conversation. The man studied me for a moment, then walked away without a word. But the damage was done. Choices had weight here, and people noticed when you made one. The rest of the day felt different. Eyes followed me longer. Conversation stopped when I passed. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I had done something unexpected. In towns like this, predictability was safety. I had just proven I was unpredictable. As evening came, the sky turned the color of rust and fire. I walked beyond the last building, toward the open land. The town looked smaller from there, less threatening, more honest. The land did not lie. It made no promises and broke none. Standing there, I understood something clearly for the first time. The West was not cruel. It was fair in the harshest way possible. It gave you exactly what you earned. Nothing more, nothing less. I did not know yet that this town would change the course of my journey. I did not know how deeply its lessons would cut. All I knew was that I had stayed when I could have left. And in the Western era, staying was never a simple decision. Night settled over the town like a quiet decision. Lamps flickered to life one by one, not to brighten the streets, but to mark places people believed were safe. I walked slowly, feeling the weight of the day settle into my bones. The West had a way of aging a man in hours instead of years. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and removed my boots. Dust fell to the floor, carrying pieces of the road with it. I wondered how many men had done the same thing in this room, asking the same questions, reaching for the same tired answers. The walls did not respond. They never did. Sleep came easier than the night before, but it was not peaceful. Dreams blended with memory. Faces I no longer remembered clearly. Places I had left behind for reasons that once felt important. In the Western era, the past did not disappear. It waited patiently, ready to return when you were weakest. I woke before sunrise, not from fear, but from habit. Outside, the town was quiet again. That same silence from my arrival had returned. But now, it felt different, familiar. I realized then that the West did not change overnight. It changed you slowly, until one day you stopped noticing the difference. I stepped outside and breathed in the cool morning air. Somewhere, a rooster crowed. Somewhere else, a door opened. Life continued, indifferent to my presence. That was the lesson the West taught best. You were not the center of the story. You were only a small part of it. As I walked through the street one last time, I felt the eyes again. But this time, they did not measure me. They recognized me. I was no longer just a stranger passing through. I was a man who had stayed. A man who had chosen restraint when hunger had argued otherwise. That choice did not make me a hero. It did not make me safer, but it made me something else. Honest with myself. I stopped at the edge of town and looked back. The buildings stood the same way they had the day before. The saloon doors creaked. The dust moved where the wind told it to. Nothing had changed, except me. I understood now that survival in the Western era was not about strength alone. It was about knowing which parts of yourself you were willing to lose, and which ones you were not. Every town would test that balance differently. Some would take your money. Some would take your fear. Some would take more than you planned to give. This town had taken my certainty. As I stepped back onto the road, I did not know where it would lead next. Another town, another decision, another cost. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. The West was not finished with me, and I was not finished learning what survival truly meant.